Hello guys, my name is NaToSaphiX, and today we have another video, and this time we're talking about how to play good defensive Counter-Strike. Now, we're going to be starting off with the basics, and we're then going to transition into more advanced stuff. So, if you kind of know the basics, you can skip a bit ahead, but I have to go through this for the kind of lesser skilled players here. So, first of all, what you want to ask yourself is, how can I be the most useful to my team? Now, you can do this in a lot of different ways, and we will cover the different ways later, but if you get this thought into your head, that plays out in your head pretty much every single round, then you will be performing better. At least if you're a lesser skilled person. If a lot of stuff is going on and you're facing a better team, obviously you can't just have some echoing voice inside of your head that you're constantly thinking about. You also need to focus about the game. But for starters, for people who haven't really gotten this down yet, it is a very good idea to just ask yourself, how can I be the most useful, valuable, or helpful to my team? Now, the best way to do this is to make sure that you always have an effect on the round. Not only the early round, not only the mid round, but also the late round. Now, I'm gonna give you kind of an example here. So, for example, we're gonna take the example with the T here. We've got two terrorists watching this smoke. It's a smoke, and it's very unlikely that 5 CTs are gonna be pushing through the smoke any minute. Well, we're gonna assume that the max count of CTs that's gonna be rushing through the smoke is 2. Now, 1 T covering a smoke where 2 CTs rush out is still a very good chance that the T is going to win it. So why would you have 2 Ts placed here watching the smoke when it is highly unlikely that anybody is going to be pushing through the smoke? And if they do, the 1 T could have done the same job that the 2 Ts do. That is stupid. That's why you want to eliminate these situations where you are useless. And I'm going to say that downright, you are going to be useless if this is what you do. Another example could be, if you have an AWPer watching the pixel spot here, and you are standing here watching this angle, well, you are completely useless. You will never see any enemies here before the AWPer either misses or hits his shot. At least if they don't come out of boiler, but assuming that we have a player over here, this would be pretty stupid. So, you are currently useless. Now, an easy way to make yourself useful is to simply pull out either a flash or a smoke. Now, with flash, you would be able to flash something like this, so that when the AWPer either hits or misses his shot, he can go back behind the wall. Either this flash can make sure that no one follows him, or he can re-peek the angle with this flash. Now, this flash obviously wasn't perfect, but it's just to give you an idea. The same case with a smoke. You can put down a smoke after he has hit or missed his shot, so that he can rotate easily. The same thing works on banana, where it is quite common with AWPers taking an aggressive peek on banana at the car. If you miss your shot, you really depend on the support of your teammates, and if there is none, then that is a serious problem. Let me just grab my phone for a second here. Someone is calling me, and that is rather annoying. Okay, so by simply pulling out a flash or a smoke to put down here, or putting a flash here, for example, you can either let your AWPer re-peek or let him get out. That is a good way to make sure that you have an effect on the round, even though you aren't really taking any battles. Okay, so what I kind of want to transition into now is how you play your role and making sure that you play out your role. So again, ask yourself, how can I be the most valuable to my team? Now, one of the ways that you can do this is by helping out with flashes and smokes, something that a usual support player will do. But also, there are a lot of ways to do this where you can help your teammates without necessarily taking any battles or actually using flashes and so on. One of the ways could be, for example, if one player playing here dies and the other player playing on B, let's say he's playing inside, that would be quite a smart choice, somewhere inside or at these coils or spools. He can help his team play better defensive Counter-Strike by calling the rotations. So this is especially key if you do not know each other very well, but instead of having the guy playing over at arch side, having him call his own rotation when he knows nothing about the situation, it is much better if the B player says what he sees. For example, says there's a smoke blocking off CT, there's a flash coming over the roof, can you rotate? Or simply just the smoke and the flash, and it should be it usually means that someone is going to be pushing in, but maybe they get the kill and he sees absolutely nothing, so he says you don't need to rotate. Now this is a very basic way of helping your teammates to play better defensive Counter-Strike. Now this is about rotations, and you need to get rotations down as a CT player and time them correctly, and don't over-rotate when fakes come down to be able to play good defensive Counter-Strike. So while it is very basic, this is something that we definitely need to think about. Now there are also a number of other ways where you can outplay your opponents with defensive Counter-Strike simply by doing setups. I will get into this in just a bit. First off, I want to just talk about briefly how defensive Counter-Strike doesn't work right from the start of the round. And the reason why this does not work is simply because if you play defensive Counter-Strike, for example this angle or inside of library here, constantly for the whole round, what the T's, or at least the good T side, will do is that they're going to be coming up, slow walking, checking all the angles, creeping up here, and then they will still jiggle peek, or peek these angles that are very standard, and they will be able to get so much map control. They will be able to clear out so many angles so early on in the round that you are going to be set to maybe block off a conquest here from the T's, having maybe a minute on the clock where you're going to be in the most defensive position that you can absolutely be. A good example of this could be overpass A site, where if you see the pro teams, what they usually do is they kind of go up and contest the fountain area at the start of the round. Maybe an AWPer peeks up mid, looks down there, maybe he gets a frag, maybe he doesn't, but they contest that area for a very small amount of time, and then they fall back to toilets, or even all the way back to the A site and take that area, because the T's have so many angles that they need to check in toilets and so on. So that is quite a defensive setup, and it does work on the Inferno A site, for example, but you also need to make sure that you don't play defensive for the whole round, because that is not going to work. A good team will notice that you're playing defensively all round, and that just does not work. So you need to kind of at least contest at the start of the rounds. It doesn't have to be as aggressive as this. What I like to do on B side, for example, is I like to take a passive aggressive angle, as I call it, where it could be on this card, for example. I might not have much cover, so it is a pretty aggressive angle, but at the same time I am waiting in an angle for the T's to show up, and then I can rotate if I miss or hit my shot, hopefully, and with some support it might get a bit easier. So passive aggressive angles also do work, and what you do by going aggressive a bit at the start of some rounds, or even all rounds, is that you keep your opponents on their toes, so they don't just, you don't want a terrorist team to be able to run all the way up banana like this, aiming nowhere, and knowing that you are going to be sitting on the bomb site from the start of the round, all the round. I mean, that's just not what you want to do, because then they're going to be clearing out angles so fast, they're going to be having so much map control, so much information, and they're going to be having so much time to actually go down with the executes. So that's why defensive Counter-Strike is not only just playing defensive for the whole round. That does not work, at least not in my opinion. You can do it some rounds to change it up, but it needs to be changing up. You can't just do it all the time. That will not work. So quickly, well, maybe not so quickly, but this is kind of the more advanced stuff in a sense. We're going to be talking about 3 different kinds of setups and how it's best to play them. The first setup we're going to be going over is the bait setup, where the general idea of it is, a good example could be someone standing in this corner we maybe have a guy watching with an AWP or just a rifle or just, you know, throwing a flashbang or whatever from this position, so that when the T's come out and check this angle, they see a guy, they battle him, and then the guy here, the guy playing Cubby, can go out and shoot 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe a million, depending on how many players are on the map, obviously, and also how stupid they are. But this is a way to be very successful, and this is what I call the bait setup, as essentially the player here is baiting. It obviously works from library as well, it works from the connector area here as well, and it could work on many maps, not only Inferno, in many situations. Something that could also be happening, for example, some guy standing here playing apps while you have another guy on the balcony area sitting so far back that when the T's come out, they might be battling this guy, and if they go too fast, they just want to get down into pit, then the guy in balcony can shoot them all, or even kill the guy short, because they don't think that someone is gonna be around apps. Okay, that's good. So the bait setup, what you want to be doing is you want to be just patient. You want to wait to make sure that your teammate has baited. If he does not bait properly, and this obviously can happen in matchmaking or if you play with lesser skilled players, for example, he baits like this and then just runs off, that's not going to be a very good bait. What you want to do as the baiter is that you want to contest this and maybe keep just battling a bit, and then fall back, maybe throw a flash like this that your teammate can peek on, or you can throw a flash like this, obviously not like this, but maybe, you know, there are many varieties, is the word that I'm looking for here, on how to bait properly. But what you don't want to do is just shoot a single shot and then just run off, because that's not going to be very good and very helpful. The worst thing that the baiter can do, though, is battling too much and then dying, because as soon as the baiter is eliminated from the round, the guy kind of needing to have a baiter, I don't know what we'll call this guy, you know, the concluder or whatever, the guy who at least, you know, takes matters into his own hands and finishes off the job, he will no longer have a bait, and then they might be able to clear out this angle. Say they insta-headshot that guy, then they can clear out this angle. They probably won't do this fast, but you get the general idea. So the absolute worst thing a baiter can do is to die in this situation. So if you are the bait, don't die, is simply what I'm trying to say. Make sure that your presence is known. Make sure that it is not only known but remembered, because you want to make sure that they constantly are afraid of you peeking out on this angle. But do not die. That is the worst thing that you can do. And if done correctly, this guy should be able to get at least 2 kills. We see it actually quite often in pro play, that exactly this position, the Cubby area, when properly baited for, can go out and eliminate 3 or sometimes even 4 players, or 5 of the enemy team. So this is a good way to actually to actually bait for each other. Now the next setup I'm gonna go over is the crossfire setup, and this is, I mean, something that is quite good, or can be quite good on the B side here, is that it's very normal for the T side to smoke off the CT spawn, but they also need to be aware that someone could be pushing with flashes or just generally pushing through the smoke. So constantly they have to be aware that someone could be here. If you let them get up here, this is a very, very dangerous angle, or dangerous area for the terrorist side, especially because they can get shot from here if someone pushes through. But at the same time, you can have a crossfire setup where you have a guy spotting them here, but you can also have a guy battling them from here. And this means that the T's, especially if they don't have good communication, will be flustered and will not be able to obviously battle 2 guys at once, so they will have to help each other out. And I mean, it's kind of like, while more minds might think better, a single mind with the mind power of multiple minds is the best, because he can kind of, you know, he knows what he wants to do. But since they are different players and they have to be able to communicate that, hey, I'm going for this guy, and the other guy has to communicate, hey, I'm going for this guy, then it is very, very hard to deal with. So crossfire setups, the general idea is that you want to have a setup where you have one guy shooting from one angle and another guy shooting from a different angle, and a good crossfire setup will have the two angles be far from each other, or at least far enough from each other, that it's not possible for one player to just one-click headshot one, and then quickly drag over to the other. So, for example here, a drag like this is not gonna happen. You're not gonna one-click both, and you are not even gonna make a spray transfer. That's ludicrous. That's never ever gonna happen. So this could actually be a good crossfire setup, but other times, just some guy playing from side, for example, and also one guy playing from CT, this is probably one of the best crossfire setups, which is also why it is so prevalent. I assume that word is used correctly, that at least it's so frequent that T's put down a smoke here, simply because this area, even though it has no cover, the crossfire setup possibilities are absolutely amazing, and that's why you want to block off that area. And that's also why you see a lot of teams throwing a smoke here, so that this area is blocked off, simply because you want to remove another crossfire possibility. Now I know this smoke is a bit off, but hopefully you get the idea here. Now, as far as crossfire setups go, there's not so much more to be said, except for the fact that if you can get crossfire setups with good cover, then that's ideal. So this is obviously really good, and also on the spools here is good. You could be in this angle, for example. It's a headshot angle, and at the same time you can't be peeked from these guys, but you can peek these guys. It's very, very powerful. But that's also why a lot of good teams smoke off this area, and then they might throw a Molotov from Banana that lands in this area, so they kind of eliminate both angles, and that's when playing defensive Counter-Strike gets really, really hard. In my opinion, the higher up you go in tiers of players, which, you know, could be just starting off at matchmaking level, it will get exponentially harder to play a good CT side. At least that's what I think, because the better strats the T's have and the better communication, the harder it is to play CT. It is hard to carry, because oftentimes you will be faced off with possibly 3 or more players at the same time, and if your CT players do not work together, if they do not cooperate, this is absolutely, this is just a lost cause. You're not going to be killing 5 guys at once single-handedly in a fair fight, you know. That's never going to happen. And the good thing, well, the thing that good T-side teams want is to get the CTs to not ever have a fair fight, and that's what they're doing with their nades and smokes. So that's what you want to obviously avoid. Another crossfire setup could be something like this, where you sit here and someone sits here. But I think you've gotten the idea of crossfire setups. You've maybe gotten the hang of it even, or you might already be an expert. But the last setup that I'm going to be talking about is the anchor setup, and it might not actually be the last setup, but I think it is. I might go and sidetrack a bit with this setup, because there are a lot of things that I need to kind of explain with this setup. Now, the anchor setup is what I'm going to call a single person holding a site, and it's kind of a term that is used in this sense, where you say, I anchor B. What it means is that it's kind of like throwing down an anchor. You do not move, so the player, if you're playing 2 guys here, for example, and one guy dies on A, this guy might be the first guy to rotate, but if you're playing anchor, you will never rotate. Or at least, you know, if you know that it's going to be on A, or the bomb is planted on A or something, you will obviously be rotating, but generally, if your teammates are still alive, you are going to be anchoring this site, and you are not going to be moving. So, that's kind of what the term anchor means. Now, we need to get back to the thought of ask yourself how you can be the most valuable to your team, especially in this anchor setup, because there are 2 main strategies when playing an anchor setup. If you are a sole survivor, or you are a single man on a site, then what you need to be doing, you need to either be doing something that can enable you to get at least 2 kills on the T's. And the reason why I say at least is because what you might have heard from a lot of casters is that the trade always favors the T's. Now, if you get 1 kill and you go down, that's a trade, and that favors the terrorist side. So what you want to be doing is you want to kill off at least 2 players, while, I mean, hopefully surviving in the end. But if you die, at least killing 2 players. So either you can take a very aggressive position, something like this. This might be a bit of a stupid position, but saying that they don't have car control, for example, something like sandbags sitting here. If you're going to be anchoring and they know that you're probably anchoring, this is a really, really weird angle to take, and it might be able to actually surprise them so that you can get 1 or multiple kills. Now, this is obviously kind of a risk-reward thing, and you only go for this if you feel that you can actually get 1 or more kills. If you go down with no kills, then you absolutely screwed over your team, and you will be trying your best to avoid this. Now, I'm going to quickly give you some examples of players here that I think are really good at anchoring sites. Most of them are probably going to be Danish, and the reason being that I'm Danish, and I just feel they're really good examples. So, yeah, no hate on that, please, but a guy called Lomme, who might be a new name to some. He used to be playing competitive Counter-Strike at quite a high level. He's kind of out of it now, but I think he's one of the players that doesn't really ever go out of it. He used to be a Counter-Strike source professional player. And what I noticed, and this is 2 years ago or so, is that whenever he anchored a site, him being the only man on the site, he would not go for the picks, but he would instead maybe take a quick battle and then just fall back and delay the terrorists. And sometimes it felt like he would even delay them by like 30 seconds so that the rotations could go in. And this is the other main strategy when playing an anchor setup. It is that you simply kill time. And against a team like Na'Vi, for example, who tend to wait out rounds for so long and then make a very kind of like almost surgical execute at the end, if you can actually buy time and stay alive for as long as possible, so that sometimes it comes down to those like 20 seconds, and if you can just make sure that you don't die in the first 10, then you might be able to just completely deny the bomb plant simply by your presence, and that can actually win you the round. So when anchoring, you need to take a decision. Either you want to go for picks, or you want to just stay alive for as long as possible so that your teammates can come in with support. And hopefully, if you actually, for example, play this angle, something that a guy like SaphiX or Dupree is also really good at playing Mirage A site by himself. Also a guy like Crims, for example, kind of the it's usually more the slow and methodical players. Dupree doesn't really get into that category, but SaphiX, he's very calm guy, works well under pressure, and he's really, really good at anchoring sites simply because he is so calm and just takes some really good decisions. He also gives great information to his team. He is the type of guy who will do his best at counting smokes, something that's also very important when you are defending. There's a big difference between 1 smoke coming in or 3 smokes coming in. 3 smokes, you can be pretty certain that T's are going to be raining in just a short while. But if you're playing this position, a position that you do see SaphiX play, what you want to be doing is just jiggle peeking like this, like shoulder peeking and stuff like this, and simply trying to stay alive, not necessarily trying to take duels. You want to delay them for a long time, and then at the best time take a duel. That is kind of the best thing that you can do. Now, if you do this, not only will you take off time, but if you take the best duel, then you should be able to win it. And as long as you're alive here, no bomb plant will go down, because they will not be able to plant at the standard spot, and they will barely be able to plant anywhere if they do not have a smoke up. So by playing an anchor setup and simply standing in this corner, making your presence known, it's kind of the bait setup again, but simply baiting them for so long that your teammates can come in with support so that you then can shine. That is another way to play the anchor setup that, in my opinion, is probably the best and the most helpful to a team, because it is rare that you can just pop up out of nowhere and challenge multiple people at once and kill at least 2, which is what you need. I mean, that's a tall order just by thinking about it, killing at least twice as many as you can die. But anyway, this was kind of unscripted. I just had a bit of a notepad going and just talked out of my head. I hope that this helped you guys. It kind of went from basic to advanced in a sense, but at the same time it's a bit of a mishmash of information, and it might be hard to there's just so many thoughts at once that it might be hard to kind of, you know, how should I say it, pinpoint so many thoughts to the anchor setup and pinpoint so many to the bait setup. But by watching this video, maybe you've just had so many thoughts at once that it will spark thoughts in your own head, and you yourself will start thinking in different ways. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to get from this. It is to better you at defensive play. And while this is a very, very long video, I hope it has been somewhat informative. It'd be nice if you would let me know if this is something that you would like to see in the future. I have been thinking about just going over setups, kind of like what Trilix is doing, where it's playing the bomb site or something like that, where he goes over different setups and how good strategies and good techniques on how to actually play a specific bomb site on a specific map, and then go through pretty much all of the bomb site or even all of the positions on the map, talking briefly or maybe a long time about how to actually play this position to the absolute best. So yeah, I hope you can use this for anything, and it is also a Counter-Strike Global Offensive video, so I hope you guys are happy with that. Anyway, I hope you have enjoyed the video, guys. Please leave a like and a comment and subscribe if you haven't. My name is NaToSaphiX, and I'll see you in the next video.